The COB is brought to you by Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries. From Barangaroo Studios, here's what you need to know about the day in business and finance.
Well, hello. This is the COB. I'm Nadine Blaney.
I'm Juliette Sala. You're blending in with the background. That's a lovely shirt. All right. Well, it has been a bit of a ho-hum day. I just said before on the close, Kyle, our good friend, has sent out a note saying it was a yawny day. I don't think that's a word, is it?
I don't think yawny is a word.
But I get what he means.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Snooze fest.
Yeah. It was kind of like that yesterday, if I'm honest, as well. And we don't, we're in the business of TV, so we shouldn't be saying it, but I think there's just a big weight of expectation for what's coming later in the week.
Yeah.
And I should put my mic on too.
Yeah, so sometimes mics help on television. She's new. I'll talk her through it. There we go, down by 1/3 on the CBO 200. The ASX 200 had a little bit more of a fall, I think, today. It was down by something like 0.4%, 29 points, 7,721. Let's get to those three themes, though, because as we say, it's budget bonanza. Yes, okay, a lot has been leaked, a lot might be baked in, but you are going to potentially see some movement to some of those critical minerals stocks tomorrow. And on that theme, in terms of, what we've been seeing with the miners, Anglo saying no deal to BHP. I love what Jessamine said. She said it's like, courting someone and then giving them the ring and then giving them a bigger ring and they still say no thanks.
They're still saying no thanks. I dare say that story has a ways to run yet. And GUD Holdings, so after the market closed yesterday, came out and upgraded. I read a good note from UBS today. Just they see a lot of good value in it as well. And just looking at the retailers in particular, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what comes from the budget tonight. Yeah. We know that stage 3 tax cuts are coming through. We know that the government says that it will be providing some cost of living relief. So, the retailers, are they looking good value? It's a question.
Although Stephen Halmarick from CBA was saying to me, does that money then just go to help paying your higher electricity bills or your higher bills and whatnot? So anyway, it'd be very interesting to see. The good, the bad, the ugly. Our producer Apurva came up with that very clever headline. That was just really about this GUD update, which saw its shares skyrocket, but some other sort of bad and ugly movements in terms of some of the losers today.
Yeah, and we'll get to all the corporate stories in just a tick. I should note that GUD was the stock of the day, so we'll bring you analysis from the call, and we will have a budget special of the call tomorrow. So a lot of those companies that could be potentially impacted by the budget. So think energy policy, think critical minerals, think housing, but also, those retailers and plenty more besides. So we do hope you join us for that.
All right, let's have a quick look at sectors. Kicking it off with interest rate sensitive sectors, the REITs under a little bit of pressure today. Goodman Group down 0.7%. But Lendlease had a good day. Yeah,
even though we've got some potential downgrades coming, at least that's what some are touting after that tax bill was laid bare yesterday. Now in the energy space, Beach is clearly the standout there, getting to the big end of town though, with Santos and Woodside all coming under pressure, as did some of those uranium, those uranium names. Boss Energy was on the call today and it was called a buy on dips. I wonder if this qualifies as a big enough dip.
All right, and just seeing what else we've got coming through there. Consumer industrials and consumer discretionaries as well, I think. And that's interesting ahead of the budget. All right. We're going to our guest.
I think we should.
Yeah.
He wants to talk all about the budget, I hear.
Yeah, I just love the budget. Love the budget.
You don't think anything's been leaked and it's all going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it's all going to be new because the government never tells the journalists a week or two ahead what's actually going to be in the budget.
All right, stop that with your cynicism. Let's talk about, what was interesting, those overseas arrivals and departures, and that plays through into that travel theme you're telling us about.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously these come out every month, so every fourth Tuesday I can talk about travel stocks, but travel stocks, but also student accommodation data was in that as well. So 800,000 students have arrived in the past 12 months, which is interesting. But just there on the trend, trying to extrapolate the trend pre-COVID, which everyone likes to do, is the black line, suggesting we should probably be having about 25 million arrivals. And we're at just under 20 million. So we're on our way back. You can still see there's a fair way to go. There's still an extra, and that's an annualised number, so that's a 12-month number. So we still think, just even on that chart alone, there is still more upside in travel stocks. So you would have seen Flight Centre today up 3.8% amongst the leaders. We still like Qantas, we still like Hello World in the small caps in that travel space, and Webjets because of their Webbeds business. So if there's an extra 5 million people landing in the country, then that's really good for anyone in that sector. So we still like that space.
And maybe tax cuts go to travel.
Yeah, well, it's $100 billion, and a lot of that's going to people who are in the higher income bracket. So I think it's about $6,000 a year if you're over on more than 180K, something like that. So that's like one business class trip to Japan or something, right?
I wouldn't
or half
know.
a business.
I wouldn't know, Martin.
I just look on Qantas occasionally just to see what the prices are.
Yeah, I did note the note on Hello World coming from your analyst, Philip Pepe, there. But when you talk about the international students, it's interesting for the housing component of it. Yeah. But it's also interesting because we've got the talk of some sort of a cap system coming into place. So what does that mean for those education providers?
Yeah, I mean, IDP education, I mean, the stock's down from $35 to almost $15 or $15 today. So it's come back a long way on fears that governments are going to crack down on immigration because it's just causing a huge housing problem. And the Canadian government has done exactly that. They capped immigration at 350,000. For a country of Canada's size, that's not a lot. So as you saw on those charts there, 800,000 student visas issued in the past 12 months. And a lot of that is I suppose, shoddier operators and not valuable education that these people are doing. So interestingly, the IDP education share price seems to be negatively correlated with student placements, as you can see. But so the government has come out with a draft policy or framework that does limit the amount of students, but they haven't actually put a hard cap on it. They've said to universities, look, you can have more students come in, but you have to provide accommodation for them. You can't just bring them in and educate them, because that means the rest of society has to pick up the accommodation problem. So we will see a lot of investment in student accommodation, but they haven't actually put a hard cap on it, Nadine. So what it's actually done is probably increase the uncertainty around what happens now. There are 1,400 institutions that can accept students from overseas. So they've all got to have their own cap, and it's going to be based on how much accommodation they provide. So it sounds really messy.
Yeah.
And the universities have come out and said this is a really messy policy because we don't really know where we stand. And so I think there's probably more work in this space. But I mean, we've bought a position in IDP education for a couple of our portfolios because we think it's oversold. It's also one of the most shorted stocks. So unless there's more bad news coming, that short position will have to ultimately close. So we think there's good upside, and quite a lot of people are looking at IDP from a value perspective for the first time in probably 6 or 7 years, because it's always been a nosebleed PE stock, and now it's starting to look a bit more attractive.
All right, I'm getting itchy because I need to talk about the budget again. One area that we will see momentum is some of those battery raw material stocks though. Yeah,
so there's a little bit of pop in those today, Juliette. I mean, not massively, but in what was a pretty average market, most things were down 1 or 2%, we did see a bit of a pickup in some of those stocks. So just a longer term thing is, look, the price of lithium hydroxide looks like it's bottoming out. I don't think a lot of people are making a lot of money at $20 a kilo. So it feels like it's sort of done its big downdrift, and now it's really about how, where do we pick the eyes out of these battery raw material stocks. So I've just added the market cap of the leaders there, probably the 10 biggest on the ASX, and you can see that they've started to pick up from a low of 45 bill to about 55 bill, but we are seeing a bit more interest, and governments like Australia are saying, look, we can dig this stuff up and stick it on, a boat and send it overseas to someone else to process it, or we can try to value add. I mean, government's been trying to do this since the 50s and 60s with iron ore. Let's build steel industry, let's build a car industry. Like, it didn't work, but I think this government's having their crack at it, which is around critical metals, because we are endowed with, outside of China, the largest endowment of things like lithium, nickel, and rare earths. Why shouldn't we develop a battery industry? So I think that's what you'll see a bit of in the budget tonight.
So would you be buying, the Pilbras? Would you be buying some of the juniors? Mineral Resources can have a hand in both pies.
Yeah, I think investors should be accumulating a longer term position in battery raw materials, because I think even though the EV story has sputtered a little bit and there's now a trade war going on around EVs, the reality is we're all going that direction. It's just a question of how long it takes. So I think we do need an investment in them in your portfolio. If you don't have one, now's a good time to start accumulating it. In our portfolios, because we run relatively concentrated portfolios will own one stock, and we've got Pilbara in our large cap core as the way to play it. But I think there's a lot of interest in things like Global Lithium, which is a stock that Shaw and Partners covers. That looks very interesting as well. So for those people who want to take a little bit more risk and move into a developer or an explorer, something like GL1 is probably worth a look as well.
What about some of the commodity plays, maybe not so much budget focused, but I know there's a silver IPO coming to market tomorrow and quite a lot of interest in that space at the moment.
There is. It's very hard. It's a bit like copper. There are not a lot of pure plays out there. Silver is something that a lot of people want to invest in, but because it's usually along with lead and zinc, it's hard to find someone who just does silver. So I think it's a bit like these ETFs, these thematic ETFs. If you really just want to buy crypto, can you buy a basket? And I think a pure play silver stock's probably going to do quite well because we get lots of interest in it, but everyone looks through and says there's nothing I can buy. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's a successful IPO.
Be interesting to watch tomorrow, 11 a.m. I think.
Yeah, we've got an interview up online with Ben Richards from Seneca. He talks about that one, and then South 32, and I can't remember the other one just off the top of my head. So that's up if people are interested in getting a bit more on that. So you heard me talking about the retailers. They've just been on mind for obvious reasons. We have had some downgrades coming, but I was looking at the share prices of some like Accent Group, Adairs. The share prices have been terrible. Haven't had a downgrade coming from those companies yet. Are you just live to that prospect, or are some of these starting to look good value?
Yeah, it's like I think they survived the confession season that normally accompanies the conferences. Yeah. So we had the big cap conference last week. I think we've got a big small cap conference coming up at the end of this month, if I remember correctly. So I think we're still waiting for some of those companies to come out. And look, I mean it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle. You see a couple of pieces of the jigsaw puzzle and you start to get a picture of what the rest look like. You don't need to see all the pieces. And so I think the companies that haven't downgraded are going to. So I still think I'm a little bit wary on that front. I mean, obviously there's good news. This is a stimulatory budget tonight. We know about the tax cuts. We know wages are still going up. So the consumers, it's not the end of the world for the consumer. It's just a bit of a two-speed. So I think there's some stocks like you talked about. Was it GUD? That stock's fallen 20% since the end of March, and it gained almost all of that back today. Probably half of that back today. So you can make money when these things get a little bit oversold as well.
We better let you go and get to your pre-budget party, Martin. Thanks so much. We'll see you next
chomping at the bit.
Enjoy it tonight, ladies.
Martin Crabb from Shaw and Partners. All right. Are we looking at some of the corporate stories, or what are we doing now?
I think we are looking at some of the corporate stories. Perfect. And so we sort of alluded to it. You can't get around talking about this one, but BHP rejected by Anglo American, saying the world's largest listed miner continues to significantly undervalue it. So we will, I'm sure, have all parties back to the table at some point.
Yeah, ARN Media, this was an interesting story. So they're going to continue to look at other alternatives for that Southern Cross Media deal. The chairman reaffirming at its AGM that they intend to pursue the deal. So they're a bit like BHP going after Anglo. They don't take no for an answer, up 4.3%.
Sometimes persistence pays off, as we all know, Juliet. Transurban. So a bit of a shake-up happening there, and a new operating model. And so executive roles for New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria have been retired. 4 new roles, though, have been created.
Seven Group down 3%. It now owns more than 91% of Boral. And GUD, we mentioned that one.
Yeah, one of the best performers. And we also alluded to the fact that it was the stock of the day. Let's listen to what our guests, David Novak from Wealthwise Education and Michael Gable from Fairmont Equities, had to say.
They had 8.6% growth in revenue, net profit, statutory 19% growth. So that's pretty good numbers. The stock did pull back from that $12 level and went actually just below 10. So now it's bounced back up above that. But it's a hold at best for me. But look, the numbers were good, and obviously that's being reflected today with the stock up 9%, and they're pretty positive outlook as well on auto parts and lighting for vehicles as well.
It's a hold here. It looks like it will edge higher. It's not a screaming buy. So I think what we're seeing today is just a bit more of a relief rally because the shares had been sliding up until we received this trading update where they pretty much confirmed their previous guidance. I think the market was concerned that there was a risk of a downgrade occurring because there's been a couple of issues.
Have a look at some of the leaders and laggards in the session. The market has fully closed now, kicking it off with some of the leaders, perhaps. No.
Oh,
Okay.
shoot.
can
Let's
just
get them
guess.
up on our screens and my computer. Well, you know, no mic, no makeup, pretty much. I'm struggling
GUD,
all around.
obviously. So GUD up 12%, Illumina up 6.5%, Neuron Pharmaceuticals. So we spoke to the CEO last week.
Yeah.
That was interesting. That's up on the website. Up 6%. Helios, I think we also spoke to them. Well, they had an update. Yeah, up 5%, and Credit Corp up 3.3%.
On the flip side, though, Fletcher Building is one of the worst performers. Of course, it downgraded yesterday. We've got Home Co Daily REITs. We saw that the REITs were coming under a lot of pressure today. 7 Group, Life 360. Life 360 has been on a bit of a roller coaster ride since it reported its quarterly. It was up yesterday, down today. And rounding it out with Telix Pharmaceuticals and Perseus Mining down by 2.3%. And I just thought I'd mention as well, Juliet, while we just run through some of these small caps, that we did have technical analysis coverage on the call. So that was a technical analysis special. And so if you'd like to listen into that, it's up online and you can also access it via the newsletter as well.
Can I just mention one of the laggards there, Latrobe? I mean, to be fair, Ascent, but 10.3% drop today. I just spoke to the CEO. That's really interesting, actually. So it's, I mean, I don't know the quite technical term, but a very sustainable way that they have of developing and procuring the magnesium, I guess, and then patented it. So there could be, you know, well, obviously in the CEO's mind, big opportunities there, and also the fact that they're in Latrobe Valley. So even though they're expanding globally, they are remaining with what he said, their spiritual home there with Latrobe.
And I do think that yesterday the announcement came through. I think it had a really good day, so maybe that's a little bit of give back, I should say, today. You can find all of our CEO interviews up online, ausbiz.com.au. Oh, guess what? Tonight.
Is
Federal
the budget.
7:30.
7:30 p.m.
Yeah,
Put it
put
in
it
your
in your
diary.
calendar.
Producer prices as well if you want to stay up that late. And then Federal Reserve Chair Jay Powell. Well, you know what you could do? You could just watch the budget, then all the budget post coverage. Then you'll still be awake when Jay Powell speaks. And then Alibaba and Home Depot, if you get up early, you can see those.
Like a barrel of laughs, but to David Scuddy, as we know him around here, you know, he's saying, oh, federal budget, it's all about the PPI. Of course, that PPI comes as a precursor to the CPI read in the US later this week. It is actually a big week. Not tomorrow when you look at what's on the agenda. We will be doing a lot of budget analysis, budget conversation.
I think the wage price index is interesting because that's one of the pieces of the puzzle that the RBA will be looking at as well. You know, if that is starting to impact core inflation
and it comes ahead of the jobs read on Thursday. So lots for markets to digest today and tomorrow. Today, a negative session. The market finishing just into negative territory for the COB Australia Index, 0.3% for the S&P ASX 200 at 7,726.
Yeah, I've got 7,723. You're probably more, anyway, around there, 7,700 and something, down about a third of 1%. All right. Sorry.
Let's wrap it up.
I'm just like, what's happening to my iris?
Well, yeah, sometimes there's a little bit of a discrepancy from the site that I'm on. But look, we will sort it all out for the newsletter, the COB. And we are in the midst.
Apologies.
We are in the midst of budget stuff, so we've both been a bit preoccupied today.
Right, we'll do better tomorrow.
Full coverage though, right, Jules?
Yes.
Right, from 10
Actually,
a.m.
I should go through, because that's what I was looking at and where my brain went. I'll go through some of the guests that we've got, because we've got so many really exciting people. PEXA Chief Economist, we're going to speak to Scott Treat from the Tax Institute. We are also going to speak to Tim Buckley from the Director of Climate Energy, Tim Harcourt from UTS on trade implications. We're also going to be speaking to Mike Zorbas from the Property Council of Australia. Yeah,
and also stock specifics, of course. Scott Phillips from the Motley Fool, Emmanuel Dat from Dat Capital, and we've got a guest as well joining us for the life sciences space, Rhys O'Connell. So plenty of stock specific coverage as well, and don't forget that budget special of the call tomorrow. We just have to get there.
We do. All right. See you.
The COB is brought to you by Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries.
Gil,
Oh, hey, Ken.
Here we go.
You still trading?
Pepperstone. Trusted in over 160 countries. You?
Well, I'm still with...
I don't think anyone trusts them.
No, I'm fine with it. Just like I'm fine with my trusty coach. 1980s John McEnroe.
Pathetic! Horrible!
1980s, huh? So, really temperamental?
Keeps me on my toes.
Awful!
It's a bit intense.
Be better!
Still fine with it.
Use your racket!
He's just staring at us.
Yeah, sometimes he yells and then sometimes he just stares.
Is he aiming for your face, Gil?
He's fine with it!
Yeah, he's definitely trying to hit you.
Fine with it.
Don't be fine with it. Switch to Pepperstone, trusted by traders in over 160 countries.
Come on, you cannot be serious!
Don't do that.
Ow.